Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another one of our energy forums here at McDonald-Hopkins. It's great to see a full room here today, and welcome to those of you that are joining us via webinar as well. This amazingly is our 15th energy forum here at McDonald-Hopkins, and we really enjoy them, and we especially appreciate when we have a great audience like this. And there is audience participation that's encouraged. So those of you that are in the audience, you can raise your hands and we'll have a mic brought to you to ask questions. You can raise your hand and give a card that's at your desk, and you can fill out your questions and have that card delivered to us. And those of you that are on the webinar, if you look at your monitor down in the right-hand corner, there's a green chat button, and you can submit your questions via that chat button. So we're here to talk about solar, and when we first started talking about this this forum, I did get a couple questions about why we're talking about solar in Cleveland, and thank God it is the summer at least, and we are having some sunny days. But solar is alive and well in Ohio, and it's particularly alive and well in the Cleveland area, and we're going to talk mostly about a great project in the city of Brooklyn, but we're going to talk a little bit about solar generally as well. And you can ask questions specifically about this project in Brooklyn or about solar, because we've got a great panel with us today. Right to my right is Mike Foley. Mike is the Director of Sustainability for Cuyahoga County. He's a former state rep when he and I both served down in Columbus, and he's been doing a great job promoting sustainability in the county. Next to him is Ivan Henderson, who is a commissioner at Cleveland Public Power. And my experience with Ivan over the course of the last couple of years on this project is really appreciating the flexibility of the city of Cleveland and Cleveland Public Power to make projects happen. I mean, they've been just a tremendous partner, and we wouldn't be doing this project without CPP. And then to his right is Gene Amaduri. Gene is the president of Enerlogic Solar out of Youngstown. He and his son Scott, who's out in Scottsdale, Arizona, do a lot of work in the renewable space. We're not going to talk a lot about it today, but there is also a project well on its way with offshore wind in Lake Erie, and Gene and his son were the original developers of that project and did a lot to push that project along. And then to Gene's right is my partner, Chad Arfons, and Chad runs the investment tax credit practice here at McDonald-Hopkins. It's a key practice area for renewable energy. The investment tax credit is absolutely critical for these projects. And what's great about Chad is you might wonder, well, how the heck do you use an investment tax credit when you're dealing with nonprofits and government entities? Well, that's Chad. He works his magic to take advantage of that tax credit even when you have public off-takers and private or nonprofit off-takers. So that's our panel. We're going to jump right into it. I've asked Gene in this project, and Gene's going to kick us off. So
Sure.
Thanks, Gene.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thank you all for being here. This is an exciting project for all of us, especially on the panel. And as Mike had stated, if we didn't have such great partners with Cuyahoga County and Ivan here with Cleveland Public Power, this would have been a very, very difficult project to pull off. The city of Brooklyn has really stepped up, providing us with a site that's very economically connected in the sense of extending, the CPP will extend their lines, pick up the city of Brooklyn's buildings, as well as then for our interconnect on a landfill that's west of, on the western edge of Brooklyn. So we have very great partners. We have a great off-taker in Cuyahoga County. We have a great utility partner, and we certainly have the site there. So I'll dig into this a little bit more, but I just want to give you that opening statement.
Great. Mike?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, and thanks, Mike and McDonald-Hopkins for putting this together. As Mike said, I'm Mike Foley. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Cuyahoga County. Prior to that, I was a legislator in the Ohio House for 8 years until I was term limited in 2014. And at least one of the things that I really tried to focus on was clean energy and renewable energy, and trying to help the state fight what I thought was kind of an important battle, which is fighting climate change, right? And when I came into the legislature, I think we did some good stuff. We passed a renewable portfolio standard at the state level. 25% of our electricity came from renewable resources by the year 2025. When I left in 2014, we had basically frozen that standard and frozen the state's kind of incentivizing and mandating clean energy from our utility companies. So I was deeply disappointed in what the state had done. At that time, the county executive Budish came in, had won election, became the county executive. Armin and I were good friends, and we both worked together at the legislature, and he knew of my interest around sustainability, so he asked me to be the director of sustainability for the county. And one of the things that I thought, and I think he thought as well, is that while the state is stepping back, that local governments have to step up. So it's been kind of deeply satisfying working with Armin and the county, trying to figure out how can we, as a county, as a local government, encourage and incentivize clean energy development at the local level. And we've had hits and misses and starts and stops. But this project we think is really exciting. I think it's actually a very cool project. We at the county will be funneling into 17 of our buildings that we own that are in the CPP footprint electricity that's coming from the offshore wind project, the LEEDCO project out in Lake Erie, but also helping in this development by taking all of the electricity from the landfill solar project in Brooklyn. And as Gene said, also, this will also be helping the city of Brooklyn. They will, as CPP is able to run a line out to the Brooklyn landfill, they will also be able to run lines off of their line and to pick up customers in the city of Brooklyn, which gives Brooklyn kind of competitive energy distribution system that they can now offer to their customers and to their own city buildings, to their residents and commercial structures. So we think it's a really cool project. We're helping to expand competition in Brooklyn. We're bringing in clean energy from a landfill. You can't do anything else with a landfill. And the things I've kind of really dug into is that landfills are capped, they're closed. There's real specific EPA requirements about what you can do with a landfill. So we're able to, but ironically, one of the things is you can turn them into a green field by putting solar panels on them. So we think it's a really cool project and one that we really at the county want to hopefully use as an example for other landfills in Cuyahoga County, because we've got about 75 to 85, depending on how you count them, landfills in Cuyahoga County that you can't do anything else with. And so we would like to help incentivize those about turning those into green fields as well and funding electricity into off-takers like Cuyahoga County or other off-takers. So that'll...
Well, and Ivan, before you go, so the EPA, because you did mention the EPA, has been a wonderful partner as well on this project. And I'll give them a little shout out. I think that the Ohio EPA and Craig Butler, the director, is arguably the best EPA in the country. They balancing those interests, the environmental interests versus business interests. I think they just do a stellar job. I don't know whether is Lynn Sowers with us today from the EPA. Hi, Lynn. So, Lynn, thank you for coming. And the Rule 13 process, which allowed us to, or will allow us to build on a landfill, is absolutely critical. And maybe if there are some EPA-specific questions, we can direct them to you. That would be wonderful. So, thank you, Lynn. Commissioner?
Thank you. Well, just again, thank you for having us here this morning and just an opportunity to share with you the City of Cleveland's commitment to renewable energy and diversifying its portfolio. Mayor Jackson approved in 2008 and City Council approved our standard for CPP. The state had its own standard, but the city says we're going to commit to renewables ourselves. And so the administration and City Council passed the standard for CPP, which specifically said that by 2015 we had to diversify our portfolio and add at least 15% renewables in that portfolio. And by 2020 we had to achieve at least 20% of our portfolio based on advanced renewable energy sources. And then by 2025, we had to achieve 25%. I'm happy to say that it is 2017 and we're well on track to accomplishing that. The city continued to commit to that and to act really with a knowledge of the impact that we were having on our environment. If you looked at our emissions in 2008, CBP CO2 emissions in 2008 could fill 18,000 football fields, 10 yards high. And the city said, we need to move away from that and improve our impact on the environment. And so it passed the standard, and CPP has dutifully committed to that. And so with the mayor's support and council's direction, we have been able to add hydro projects, commit to the offshore wind project, and now work with our customers to develop projects like this. And so we're very pleased to work with Brooklyn and the county to do what's never been done and to think outside the box a little bit to create not just metering that would work, but in this case, virtual metering, which is somewhat of a pilot for us, but we're committed to work with our customers. And that really is the difference between us and some of our competitors. We are public partners. We commit to help our community and address our community's unique needs in a way that meets that customer's needs while benefiting the community as a whole. And that basically is what public power does. And so that's why we're very pleased and excited about this project and looking forward to a great success here.
Wonderful. Chad?
So just, it's funny, just picking up on what Ivan just ended there with, the first thing I have on my notepad was that this is really a private-public part. It's, kind of pre-development stages. We started out this discussion a couple of years ago now where we were engaged very heavily with Cuyahoga Land Bank, and they were helping us identify sites and working hand in hand with us to try to find good locations to do this project. And through that process, we came to the city of Brooklyn and the landfill site, and we also came to Mike Foley and the county. And so it's really just been a process of a real genuine partnership to make this come to be. And part of that, the private side of it, is the investors that come in and provide capital to make this possible. And part of the incentive or the return on investment that they receive is due to the tax incentives that are available at the federal level. And so it's really a matter of structuring the project and the financing in a way that can leverage the purchasing power of the county, but also using these tax incentives that private investors can use. And primarily those are an investment tax credit, which is a credit on federal income tax. Right now that's a 30% tax credit based upon the amount of the project costs. And then the project also benefits from depreciation of the assets, and under our current code we've got what's called bonus depreciation, which basically means that those tax benefits can be realized quicker. And so it's really a matter of kind of leveraging the opportunities from the private capital side of it and marrying those together with the public side of this project.
Great. So, Commissioner, you mentioned virtual net metering, and I just want to touch on that for a couple minutes because it is such a critical part of this project. I did put a slide up on the board as well, but Gene, could you just take a minute and just talk about traditional net metering and then distinguish it from virtual net metering and why that's so critical for the project?
Sure. So in the state of Ohio, the investor-owned utilities come under the Public Utility Commission with certain rules and regulations that don't necessarily always mirror at a municipal. But one of them is this issue with what's referred to as net metering. So if I have a business and I put a solar system in, on my roof or on my parking deck, and I serve my particular building, and there are times when I produce more energy in the grid, there's always a bit of a discussion as to what the value is. Does it offset energy at certain prices? But anyways, the investor-owned utilities have certain rules relative to that. What can't be done with net metering is I can't build, in the example of what we're doing here, I can't build a solar farm in Brooklyn and then put it onto First Energy's lines as an example, and then send it to other buildings that aren't part of that Brooklyn location. But what I can do, because we have a partner like Cleveland Public Power, I can do what's referred to as a virtual net metering. So the energy that comes in from the solar farm goes into CPP's lines, and it comes out at some location, in this particular case, the 17 buildings of Cuyahoga County. And so we can end up crediting the consumption that the county's buildings would be using against the energy that we produce. So it's a virtual net metering as opposed to a hard net metering.
So the electrons themselves are not the same electrons. That's why it's virtual. There's
Yeah.
electrons going on the grid in Brooklyn, and there's other electrons that are going into the buildings for Cuyahoga County, but we match it up from a financial standpoint.
That's correct. That is correct.
All right.
And if I could add here, what we saw as this project evolved was the customers' loads were dispersed through the city or through the county. And in this case, with the solar field being located somewhere else, we kind of thought a little bit out of the box here. Most utilities will not do that. But again, public power utilities really focus on the customer's need more and try to accommodate to make projects like this work.
Well, and so before we started this, I didn't realize that there was a substation in Brooklyn, which now obviously I do know, and you're going to be extending a line from that substation. I mean, what's the CPP footprint, and are you in other communities besides Cleveland, and is this something that could be repeated?
Well, I believe you have a slide that shows our footprint generally, and we're in about 2/3 of the city. This is an application where it made sense to work outside the box. We have other solar installations and working with some of our other customers where their solar field is basically contiguous to their current project or actually on their current property or reasonably close. But what made this one so unique was the loads were dispersed, and being able to virtually net meter it really solved the problem.
Okay, so
And by law, you can go outside of the city to some extent, right? So you can't take over all of Cuyahoga County, but there's some geography you can go outside of the bounds of the city of Cleveland. Is that
Right, we are by law allowed to serve loads beyond the city of Cleveland, and we've done that in a couple of instances as well.
I mean, I know Euclid, right?
Yes,
And so Euclid, Brooklyn, is there East Cleveland maybe?
we have some additional customers outside the city as well.
Okay. So to the panel, we're just thinking about solar and why there's the interest in solar today in particular. The cost of panels has come down, the economics has changed dramatically. We have the investment tax credit still in play that Chad, you talked about. We've got a renewable portfolio standard. The city's got one, the state maybe will have one for a little bit. And then we've got this virtual net metering. So there's in my mind, four drivers that are making solar more interesting today. Panel, what's most important? I mean, of the four, and maybe I'm missing something, what driver in particular do you think is making it work up here?
So I'll jump in here. So, and I went to college up here at Case Western Reserve University, and so I've spent a lot of time in Northeastern Ohio. And back in the 70s when I first started working in solar, people would say, you're doing it under the worst conditions in the United States because of the lake effect and the cloud cover. But in reality, when you look at the research that's been done in the massive amount of application software that allows you to calculate how much energy you're going to get on an annual basis out of a system here in Cleveland relative to one in Southern Ohio or one in Phoenix or one in Southern California. All of us who've spent enough time going around the country, we would say certainly Phoenix has substantially more sun than we do here in Northeastern Ohio. No one would argue with you on that. But again, for these systems to perform, it doesn't have to be this crystal clear blue sky perfect day. So when you compare the output of a solar farm here to one in Phoenix, as an example, yes, you're going to get a little more energy out of the one in Phoenix. When I say a little more, maybe 15 to 20% more, like for like. But the cost for power out in Phoenix is more in the 6 to 7 cents range. The offset up here is more in that 10 to 12 cent range. So when you look at the difference in percentages of the output, it starts to come more into parity. In addition to that, what's made solar effective really pretty much across the country is what Mike was referring to. 7 years ago, you would spend a number like $7 to $8 a watt installed. Now you're under $2 a watt installed, and the prices are continuing to fall. So a couple of things have come into play. One, been a tremendous amount of growth in just manufacturing panels, which drives prices down. There's a tremendous amount of experience in contractors to do this work. A big component of the system is going to be the racking system. There's we're going to be using a racking manufacturer out of just south of Columbus, who've done landfills all across the country, have a tremendous amount of experience in it. So what we're pulling together here is an awful lot of capability within the state of Ohio to build this. But in addition to that, this project, as Ivan and Mike were talking about, is allowing us to have enough experience with a variety of public-private issues so that we start to drive the soft costs down. Because anybody who's been in development knows that not only do you have to construct the building or construct the project, but all of the things associated with the legal side, the regulatory, the environmental. This is allowing us to really learn what we need to do. And Lynn's been a great help at the Ohio EPA to be able to start driving the costs down to allow us to get this even more effective, which will allow us to be more economic, so we'll continue to drive the market larger.
Well, let me ask it a different way. Does this project happen without the renewable portfolio standard?
Are you asking me?
No, anyone.
Well, it happened without the renewable
Yeah.
portfolio standard because the standard was frozen in 2014 to 2016. It's back in place now. And when you talked about what are the motivations or what are the kind of the drivers, I think one of them for us is just environmental, right? That while there's financial considerations and trying to figure out the tax credit piece, especially for a public body. How does a public body? We don't pay federal taxes, so how do we take advantage of the 30% investor tax credit? And so marrying this up with the private sector, figuring all those things out has been very complicated, and we've had some challenges because as a county we can only engage in 10-year power purchase agreements for the drawdown of power. Whereas normally when you're doing renewable energy projects, you're figuring this thing out over a 20-year period. So there's been a lot of kind of legal hurdles, but I do think that one of the things that is at least driving our mind is just the environmental aspect of this. And Mayor Jackson and the City of Cleveland just announced they're going to comport with the Paris Climate Accords. We at the county are going to be making a similar statement probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks. That where the local governments, I think, need to think about this stuff, that there are real kind of environmental consequences to policy, and that we need to, while the state and the federal government are stepping back, we need to step up. So that was a big driver for us. I work for a county where I've got a boss who is very, really wants to figure this stuff out. We also have budget considerations, obviously, right? And the state budget looks like it's going to be passing. We're going to get less dollars from the state, and so we've got some budget issues. So does the City of Cleveland. So trying to figure the economics of these things out is really, really, really important. We have taxpayers we have to be accountable to. So it's been very complicated, and we need the RPS. We need the tax credit driver. The fact that panels are dropping down is very important to us. The cost of this dropping down is very important to us. But we're trying to marry all of those things together with an 11-person county council, an executive who's thinking about environment and economics has been testy at times, but I think we figured it out and are
Okay,
proud of this work.
so portfolio standard, I hear what you're saying because it wasn't in play, although I want to hear from the commissioner because Cleveland's portfolio standard was in play. When this came before county council, the 20-year cost projection for your existing power source versus the solar power source, there was a significant cost savings associated with this solar project for the county. So does the county do this project without that power savings?
It gets tough, right? So we're
I know.
we projected out we would spend, normally if we just kind of went business as usual, we would have spent $170 million in electricity costs for our sector of buildings that we currently have. Under this, we are able to figure out we're going to save about $3 million over that course of that 10 years. So, I'm sorry, over 25 years. We modeled this out over 25 years. So it helps that all these things exist.
Right.
And if it was even, or if it was, and instead of spending 170, would have spent 175? Would we have done it? I don't know, right? But I know that the economics and all the hard work that the CPP worked with us on, and the developers on trying to put together a really good package,
Right.
Made it a lot easier for us to make this decision.
Commissioner?
Well, from the city's point of view, the city passed its renewable standard in 2008 and did not put any price constraints on that requirement. But it was committed to sustainability, it was committed to renewable energy, and it was committed to reducing our carbon footprint. And with that commitment in mind, we were able to invest in other renewable projects that frankly are much more expensive than solar projects. And it is the city's commitment to improve the environment and diminish our negative impacts. So what you're seeing here is the city's commitment to projects like this, where it makes sense, working with customers to meet their unique needs and hopefully save the customer money in the long term. So Mayor Jackson, City Council, really committed to this many years ago, and you're seeing the fruit of it. And so, as Mike said, the commitment to the Paris Accords really shows again and reaffirms the city's commitment to improve the environment and to be willing to go the extra mile in cases like this, to have the customer and to do it as economically as possible.
Chad, I was going to say, because you're doing projects, particularly for higher ed and for some of the institutions, cultural institutions in town. Why are they doing it?
Well, I mean, I think it has to be, you had said which is the most important, and you and I have had this conversation many times, but I think it takes all of these, and I think it takes a certain amount of magic to get these deals done. And, so it requires, for an urban project, it requires virtual net metering. It requires the tax credit and the bonus depreciation and the tax incentives, and it requires a motivated off-taker that is, feeling responsible for environmental sustainability. It takes all of those things, and it takes good partners really to make it work.
Yeah. No, I agree, and the virtual net metering to me is just tremendous. I mean, we're talking about an urban environment, and you need land. I mean, you need about 6 acres to do a megawatt, so you can't rely on rooftops to do sizable solar.
Right.
And if you're going to use ground mounted in an urban environment, it almost has to be virtually net metered. So, but I agree, all of them work together.
Well, and then to take unproductive land that can't be used for something else and now put it to where it's creating electricity, it's generating tax dollars, it's creating jobs in Ohio. I think it kind of hits all the buttons, which is maybe that magic that makes this project happen after so many struggle to get done.
Yeah. So let's just go back to Brooklyn for a second. I put up a slide with. It's got both the layout and the a view further back with where the line has to come from the substation. I mean, so Gene and Mike and Ivan too, maybe you guys could tag team just logistically how is this working? Where is that line being extended? A little bit about the Brooklyn site, and then Mike, I want to talk about the benefits for the city.
If I walk over there to point, will you still see me? Okay. So I think you're all familiar with this part of Cleveland, but the airport is over this direction. So this is Memphis Avenue, this white road there that's going straight east-west through the center of Brooklyn. And then, of course, our landfill is right here. So the Cleveland Public Power will be coming down and extending their line along Memphis, and we'll be connecting to a number of the Brooklyn's buildings there. And then there is a service garage right here where that red mark is, and then extending the line in right here, we'll be setting the step-up transformer and then connecting to the solar field here. This is that solar field on top of the landfill. Initially, we'll be building 4 megawatts in this lower section, and then above it, we have the ability to build another 6 megawatts as we go forward. But the initial will be this portion right here. So I think that probably answers what you're asking.
Great. And Commissioner, how big of an undertaking is that to extend the lines? I mean, I don't know whether you can share anything as far as cost or time frame to do that extension.
Well, the installation itself is not very difficult. We have some of our infrastructure reasonably close, so the investment of time and the money there, we actually will see a very quick payoff from this investment because we are serving several county buildings in addition to facilities in Brooklyn. So the investment really pays for itself really very fast.
Okay. And then, Mike, maybe talk about why the mayor was going to be here, and unfortunately she had to decline, but maybe talk about what she was thinking about and why Brooklyn went forward with this.
Yeah, so for Brooklyn, this makes a lot of economic sense. Right now, they've got staff who have to go and cut the grass over there and make sure the fences are up and make sure, when kids are out doing things kids shouldn't do, and they have to chase them off the landfill, they've got to pay someone to go do that. So what this project does for them is it takes something that costs them money and is actually going to be making money for them. There will be a lease payment, there will be a prepaid lease payment. They will be making like $350,000 a year for basically prepayment of a 20-year lease on the property. So the panels will be sitting on the land, and there's a lease payment made to the city of Brooklyn. In addition, they will not have to pay for the maintenance anymore. In fact, they may even get paid for the maintenance. I don't know where those discussions are at, but the project will be paying someone to go and cut the grass, make sure fencing is up, and that the site is secure. So they'll be making money off of this. And as Commissioner Henderson said, as the lines run out to the landfill, there will be lines running off that will be able to offer services to the city of Brooklyn, and I think you guys have worked out an arrangement with that, so that I think Brooklyn will actually be getting cheaper power for their municipal buildings because of this setup. So and being able to offer power to other customers in the city of Brooklyn. So. The funny thing is, as I said, I was a state representative before I took this job, and I was talking one day on an explicitly political conversation with one of the council people out in Brooklyn. We were talking about something, and he said, "Hey, Mike, you're down at the county now, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." She goes, "And you're doing sustainability?" And I said, I am, yeah. He goes, we've got this landfill. We don't know what the heck to do with this landfill. Is there anything you can, is there anything the county can do to help us out with this landfill? And I said, well, maybe there is. And so we started talking to the developers, and because we did have 4 or 5 different sites we were looking at in terms of this project. And as kind of the considerations were being made, we kind of added the Brooklyn landfill site to the mix. And as you're kind of whittling down what are the best sites, what are the worst sites, the Brooklyn landfill made a whole bunch of sense because they own the landfill. It was close enough to CPP infrastructure, and they were interested. They were really an interested party to take advantage of it. So kind of I work in a non-political entity now, a job, but sometimes those political conversations take off.
Just for a minute, talk about that American Greeting site, because I think that discussion's interesting in that it's fairly close, and there's been talk about, American Greetings obviously has left the city of Brooklyn, and there's a huge site left where they used to be, and this talk about maybe having a green offering, to bring more sustainable companies into that site.
Yeah, and I think companies are interested in being able to advertise that they're getting green power, right? So Brooklyn has about a mile away from the site going west. There is land available for development, and I think this is one of the things that Brooklyn wants to be able to advertise and brag about, is that as this site gets developed and as there's potential for future development on the with solar panels in the 6 acres or 6 megawatts that could still be available, that maybe there's a way to draw another line out from the landfill out to where the site is and offer green energy just into that old American greeting site and use it as a business attraction economic development tool.
Yeah.
Mike, that's really, again, the value of a public partner whose commitment is focused on what are the customer's unique needs and how do you accommodate that. So that is why the city is so flexible, and it has improved and allowed CPP to work with Brooklyn to meet one of our needs in our community.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm putting up the slide just of the highlights, and I'm struck by the first involved with this project, the first solar project in Ohio on a former landfill.
I don't know if that's correct, sir.
Go ahead, enlighten me, because I know that Massachusetts.
We're building one right now in the city, for the city of Newark.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Size?
Megawatt.
Okay, great. So second.
One of the first.
One of the first. One of the first
The
virtually.
first, it's over 2 megawatts. How about that?
One of the first virtually net.
It's a trial run.
I love it. One of the first virtually net metered projects in Ohio.
You were fact-checked, Mike.
I love it. We all need it. I'm told it's the 7th largest. It would be the 7th largest solar array in the state of Ohio, largest in northeastern Ohio. Any comments from the panel just on those first and maybe where this could lead?
Well, I'll comment again on the virtual net metering. For us, this is a pilot for us. I'm not aware of any other utility in Ohio that is virtual net metering on this scale. I think it should work, and it may open up doors for additional opportunities.
Great.
I think the other thing is in the fact that whether it's the first, second, or third doesn't really matter. I think that the interesting part is that we've pulled together a lot of entities, EPA, the legal side, the financial side, a great utility partner, a great off-taker, everybody, pushing the ball the same direction. And I think that's what's really been so cool about this project. Not only the sustainability part, and that we're reducing, the carbon footprint of the county and the city, but the other part is to really enjoy working with the people that we're working with, because everybody is pulling the wagon in the same direction. That's been, and I'm sure all of you have been on projects where people are pulling it apart as opposed to pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, this is, as we've worked through this, we've got at least 75 closed and capped landfills in the county that you can't do anything else with, right? And so this is kind of the pilot project for what I hope is more projects. You've got to find the off-taker, you got to, work with the local utility, and it's been easy working with Cleveland Public Power, and you've only got a certain footprint, but so working through those dynamics as we go forward, but at least we have a template on kind of how to move forward with this project, and one that I think makes a lot of sense that other people will want to emulate, hopefully. Yeah.
Mike, just take a minute and talk about domestic content for this project.
Yeah, so we wanted as much domestic content as possible. When we calculated savings, we originally thought we would save about $4 million over the life of the solar project over 25 years. Our council really pushed to have, instead of saving $4 million, maybe save a little less than that, and you use American-made panels. And so they pushed us and pushed the project to develop with American-made content as much as possible, and we're going to do that. So First Solar will be the provider for solars out of Toledo, so they're Ohio producer of panels. As Gene talked about, we've got racking systems from Cincinnati, the developers from Youngstown. We've got local labor that'll be working on this, so it's we think it's it's a win-win-win for us in terms of producing clean energy. We're saving money, and we're using Ohio-based developers and products to put the project together.
Great. We're going to get to some questions from the audience, but before we do, Gene, just to throw a little bit of a curveball at you, the president came out.
Was that for that shot about fact-checking?
Yes, it was. So the president came out with an interesting statement about his border wall and the use of solar panels on the border wall. And I know you've been working on a project down in Mexico, Texas and Mexico, and I'm just curious, is that something that is just totally outside the realm, or based on your experience
So
in
how
that
many
area?
Republicans are in the room before I answer this question? Full disclosure, Mike was formerly the Cuyahoga County chairman of the Republican Party, right?
I was.
That's right, okay. So anyways, to answer your question, so we were working on a major development that we would install 4,000 megawatts in Texas, cross the Rio Grande and supply to the Mexican public-owned utility. Unfortunately, we started this project before the presidential election, so we put a lot of money and time into this. And things happen down there between the countries, obviously, but the other thing that really threw the curveball on that project was Mexico is privatizing their electric utility, so there's an awful lot of things going on right now that didn't allow this project to go forward. But to answer Mike's question, and you could Google this too, but there's one suggestion to actually build solar panels, face them towards Mexico, if you're facing due south, and build it on the wall, and then take the energy from the solar panels to help offset the construction of the wall. Is it doable? Yes. The difficult part will be to bring transmission line. We're not going to bring this guy down there yet. To bring transmission lines to literally that line along the Rio Grande there. Now, does it make more sense as you get closer to Southern California? Absolutely, because now you have the infrastructure right there to take that power and feed it into Southern California, or and maybe in the future feed it into Mexico. I think it's doable. It'll be interesting to see as they put pricing together, the economics on it. I've seen some people say that the simple payback, if you will, is going to be 5 years or less. I don't know whether I would go that route.
Racking system.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Foundations, everything. Yeah, security, protection, all of that. But it's an interesting idea, and I'm sure it's going to be pursued and fully engineered, and people are going to kind of come up with whether this makes sense or not. But it's doable.
Okay. All right, so we are getting some questions, and I want to get to them. Before I take the written questions, does anybody want to take a stab at a question with the microphone to the panel? I mean, if you do, just raise your hand and we'll... Okay, right here.
Is it on?
Are you open to doing this kind of projects in other places? How interested is CPP in doing other similar projects, either within the city, or I guess do they need to be bordering suburbs around Cleveland? I'm trying to get a sense of, we could bring you a number of other projects. I'm just trying to.
Well, at this point, we are open to looking at other projects. We require that the customers that would be served by the facility be within our footprint. It is advantageous for the cost if it's also close to our footprint. But we could look at it and evaluate it.
But you'll do virtual net metering in other places within the city then, where you have a footprint already?
We'll look at it. As I said, this is a pilot. We expect it to work. It should work fine. But again, we are open to discussing that. Yes.
I think one other point that Ivan would make is they're looking to expand their footprint. So an off-taker that's adjacent to their lines that is currently being served by their competition, where somebody they could bring in would be advantageous as well. So there's a plus side to that as well. So it doesn't just have to be customers that are served by CPP right now.
Well,
I was waiting to see if we were going to get a reaction to that.
Is that a fair statement? No.
they need to be customers that we will serve.
Yes, yes.
Sooner or later.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Anybody else from the audience? Okay, so first question, Ivan, is to you. And this goes to power mix. To the best you're able to, what's the current mix of coal, natural gas? I don't know if there is any oil burning generation, and then solar, wind. What's current, and then aspirationally, what
Okay.
you have to be?
Well, that's a great question. In fact, I thought I would be asked that question. So here's some statistics for you. 2012, CPP had about 1% renewable. 2017, we have 15% hydro and 2% wind. 2012, we had 18% natural gas, and today we have about 33% natural gas. 2012, we had 75% coal. Today, we've reduced that to about 52% coal. And our commitment and our goal, as instructed by the Mayor and City Council, as I said, is to achieve a 25% by 2025. So we're continuing to look at other sources and other means to reduce that.
Okay. You're up again.
Okay.
Does CPP execute long-term 20-plus year PPAs for large-scale renewable energy, 10-plus megawatts?
Well, we have the ability to. We've entered into some agreements that are not PPAs, that are even longer than that. But yes, we have the ability to do so.
This would be probably Ivan for you or for Jean. Well, first of all, when will the Brooklyn project be constructed? And then when will it be operational?
So our intent right now is to break ground in August. We want to take advantage of the dry season as we install the racking system and bring the panels in. The schedule right now is that we would be completing the bulk of the work by December, and commercial operation date would be in that January, February timeframe. The full testing of it, because of the conditions in January and February here in Northeast Ohio, probably the full testing output won't be until late February, earlier March. But we'll be producing power by the first part of 2018.
Okay.
And I think you should, I just think it's interesting that we're in a real rush right now. We've got to purchase panels and make a commitment to purchase panels by, I think, early July, right? Because there is a deep demand for solar panels and a kind of a backlog of being able to purchase from First Solar or other providers as well.
Well, so just take a minute on that. So how did we go from domestic panel manufacturers going into bankruptcy to there being a shortage of domestic panels?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Okay, so two things are going on right now. There's there's litigation moving forward that were brought by a number of domestic solar panel manufacturers that are saying that panels that are being imported are under market. So there's a potential to add a significant tariff. And when I say significant, the numbers have been in that 30 to 40% range. So it would take a panel that's coming in here from China or Indonesia and make that almost half again as expensive. So there's a very big concern about that. So a number of projects that might have been scheduled to be built in 2018 are being advanced in 2017. So as many panels that can come in as possible right now that could beat this potential tariff. There's no assurance there's going to be a tariff, but there's a concern. Secondly, what's happened, and a lot of the panels that come in are coming from China. In China, the Chinese government has changed some of their utility mix as well, so they're driving a little bit stronger on renewables. So what's happening is some of the panels that had been exported to Europe and here are now being retained in China. So two things have happened. One, a number of these projects have been advanced, so that increased the need. And then secondly, the supply has been choked a little bit by the Chinese government, not to choke it to come to us, but choke it by the fact that they want a higher percentage of renewables in China, so the panels are staying there. But to answer your other question, Mike, when we sat down with the county and in addition to the US-made content, you know, the panels were less expensive coming in from Trina and Canadian Solar and others, but we worked with the county to come up with a solution of US-based panels, which it just so happens that First Solar manufactures in Toledo. And so we were able to reserve the 4 megawatts of panels that are made in the US that are in the warehouse in Toledo. And, you know, we've got those reserved through, you know, pretty much the early part of July. And that's why there's been a big push to get all of the various agreements done so that we can release those panels.
Okay. Another question, this, maybe Chad, this is for you. Looking for an understanding of who the tax investor is for this project. I mean, we've talked about really all the parties except for that party, so maybe who are they and how do they fit in to the deal?
So we've worked with the county's consultant, Eutectics, in terms really from the outset. Again, one of the early partners in this process and in this project, and they had worked with an investor that's based in California, and so that investor is underwriting the deal now and putting it together. And you know, but I guess generally speaking, large banks are probably the typical tax equity investor or investors that are interested in these kind of tax advantaged type of projects. And obviously KeyBank, I think here locally is you know, big in renewable energy, and but I think it's typically banks that are.
So what's that market like, and has there been any changes in the market with the changes in Washington? I mean, is there talk about eliminating the investment tax credit? Has there been any pullback from deal interest by the folks that you work with?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I think probably anybody here knows, you know, the investment tax credit for solar has been kind of a political football. And interestingly enough, I think it really has been throughout its history. It started out being signed by President Kennedy, and it started out at 7%, and it has gone away and been increased over the years. And then, you know, obviously kind of most recently in 2005, I think it was stepped up to 30%. And then, you know, as part of the economic recovery legislation, it went through different changes, and obviously now it's in a process of kind of being stepped back. So over the next coming years, it's going to basically take steps back to that. Right now it's scheduled to go back to 10%, I think in 2022. So that uncertainty has absolutely affected the investors in this market. It's made it very challenging, and it seems like each year that it gets extended or not, it creates a rush or a chilling effect, and so it's been very challenging.
Yeah, and just while you're on a roll, just have you ever done a project with the investment tax credit and the new market tax credit? And even if you haven't, could those two tax credits be combined on a renewable energy project?
So I haven't with a renewable energy project and new markets, but they absolutely could, and I think those two would, you know, play nice together. Those two programs would work well together. I think probably a bit of the challenge for investment tax credit for renewable energy and new markets would be, you know, a focus of new markets is job creation, and you know, putting solar panels out in a field doesn't in and of itself really create jobs. So I think that would be a bit of the challenge for new markets. But I think a project like this,
it wouldn't be a bar though?
New Markets is challenging unto itself, so you're marrying two challenging programs, but
And how much of Cleveland is eligible for New Market tax credit?
almost all of it.
Almost all of it?
So in a project like this where, there's significant jobs that are Ohio-based, that would be a good story for New Markets.
Okay. Anybody else on that? I was just giving you a break, Ivan, because the next question is
All
for you
right.
too. So this is virtual net metering. So the question is virtual net metering one for one, e.g. if 100 watts is produced at the solar site, does the county get a credit at its buildings for that 100 watts, or is there assumed to be some loss?
It's generally one for one.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So just thinking about that, what is the load on those buildings? I assume it's tremendously more than what's going to be produced by the solar project.
Yeah, so with the solar project, we'll produce maybe 8-9% of our electricity load. The offshore wind, I think, is around 15, and then we'll be getting the rest of our load through just pool power that CPP is able to provide.
So is it a real-time credit, or could there ever be a scenario on a hot, windy Sunday where the buildings aren't taking that much power, but the systems are putting out a lot of power? Is it if there was, was there a true up on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or?
Right. Well, so the production from the solar facility and the offshore wind facility will not equal half of the county's load. So on the best day, you still wouldn't see that scenario.
Okay. We're going to let everybody just do a closing comment or a closing thought, unless there's another question from the audience. Anybody got something they want to ask? Okay.
No, there was a
we got
question
one.
right there.
Sorry.
No problem.
Don't mean to keep you guys longer. Underutilizing other Ohio content, have you guys decided, I know for like the landfills, you can't disturb the ground, you may have to use like a precast ballast or something like that. Has a supplier for those type of products been chosen yet?
Gene, do you want to?
So RBI is the ultimate, will be the racking system, but for example, the concrete and the various ballasting material will be coming from Cuyahoga County. Even though they're down in Cincinnati, they're not going to be driving all that up. So anybody who's interested in potentially supplying material or labor, if you'll come up afterwards and give me a business card or whatever. Conti out of Edison, New Jersey, has been selected through an RFP process to be the actual EPC contractor, but they're going to be hiring locally and sourcing locally. So, like I said, I'd be happy to share your information with them. And to answer your question, no, we've not selected a specific supplier of the concrete material or the ballast or whatever.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Deborah, there's a question to your right and back.
Not to change the subject, but is there anyone looking at, with the fact you got 75 or 85 landfills, looking at municipal solid waste to fuel?
Well, I'll take that one. Well, as you may recall, the city of Cleveland looked at that extensively in 2012, 2013, and we were unable at that time to get support from the community for a municipal solid waste to energy facility in our community.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I can. We've looked at a number of projects down in Louisiana and Florida. There are a couple operating. There are challenges with that, and unfortunately, in some cases, what you think is a good idea, then you end up with the waste haulers not being happy about it. That some of the landowners, some are for it, some are not. But at the end of the day, the economics are very, very difficult to make work. There's a tremendous amount of maintenance with these plants. You need to do the kind of like this, where the off-taker for the power, if it can be the county or the city or the municipality, really helps. but it's always difficult because there's so many entities that have to pull the wagon in the same direction. But we think it's a great idea. It's just, it's marginally there, and the soft costs are significant.
Anything else? Our firm president's here, Sean Riley. Thanks for coming, Sean. Any thoughts for us? Questions or? This will be good.
Thank you, Mike. No, in fact, I just want to thank everybody for attending. I was commenting to Deborah that this is an incredibly well-attended event, a lot of new faces. I encourage you to attend more of our programs like this. We do them on topics other than energy. All of them are, I hope, as well done as this one was today. So I think we should give our panelists a good round of applause here.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll go in the same order, starting with you.
Yeah, just appreciate everybody coming, and like I said, we'll certainly entertain anybody who can provide material or components or labor to this project. I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. But really appreciate the people on the panel, appreciate McDonald Hopkins for having us here, and appreciate all the hard work they put into this, both Chad and Mike. And certainly we've got great partners here with the county, with Ivan and CPP, and with Mike Foley at the county. And appreciate the mayor supporting this as well. And Brooklyn, sorry.
Great. Mike?
Yeah, no, again, thanks for putting this together. You know, the county, we do a lot of things. You know, we do Health and Human Services, Public Works, we do, we run jails and court systems. Putting together solar development projects probably isn't one of the things that we're known for, right, or have any practice at. So I just want to say we're really lucky that we've got a lot of great partners. This is something we really want to encourage and push and help incentivize with our buying power. But we've got great partners with, Interlogics and Cleveland Public Power and Utetics and McDonald Hopkins and in the city of Brooklyn. So we're just fortunate, I think, to have some really smart people who care about this stuff locally in town to help us put this thing together.
Great. Commissioner?
Right. Well, just again, thank you for having the city here today and just the opportunity to share. The city is committed, and CPP is basically doing what it's always done, and that is just to be a good public partner and quietly and humbly do the work that it's done for our community. Solar power is here to stay. We look at the value of solar long term and think that in addition to virtual net metering, there are other advantages to solar, like solar storage, that really provides additional advantage to customers, lowers our cost because we reduce our transmission cost, improves capacity charges for us, and lowers that as well, which ultimately benefits the customer. So solar's here to stay, and we're committed to make it work in our community.
Great. Thank you. Chad?
No, thanks for attending, and feel free to contact us if we can answer any questions. Obviously, we covered a lot of ground, and these are complicated projects, so I'm happy to help.
Well, thank you all, and thank you all for attending today, and for those of you joining us via webinar. If you do have a question, I would encourage you to go to our website. This form will be posted. There is a place where you can submit questions, and we'll also be sending out a survey. We hope you'll respond to the survey honestly with your feedback. But thanks again for attending today.